제 점벌도던 힘이 정도는 물음 점벌을 겨도 bakır dargan sandı şerman tomba tüce canla ki şamzarını canrıvar sevgi cankamsa cağır tüge şenler yıllar cime banzo canla sonra da gonca toban bora şimdi lo gonca toban bora şimdi lo gonca toban bora şimdi 无上甚深微妙，被千万劫难遭遇。我今下面得数持愿记如来真实义，为度化一切众生，请大家发无上殊胜的菩提心。万不尼巴的他玛的那中等的上主生化进步，上生化进步先辈，的那中等的了上主生化进步先辈。nder kët jih surdu jundin de shanchu sanhua nipa dang kurta kyun chirtaram thongwara gyo nipa dang kurta no mu kurti no mu na kang lag shanchu sanhua kang lag tag nan dut chung dut pa chung la ga jang yonsu magdong war ngirwa lag ga tsarwa shanchu shanchu sanhua chimbo Небадам картона дочер типа имбров таброщаго небадам картона чамбан жумбрушиба имбров таброщаго небадам картона марнипе канватам нетер небадам марнипе канбадам дабр таброщаго небадам картона тымгы кет бар таброщаго небадам картона удак тунжбе кимла сернавшиба та чагброщи бар таброщаго Небадам картона рюки про таброщавы, небадам картона парби рик жеyon зор конвеноца мебадан чер мебабки про таброщавы, небадам картона санди тамчи мауна таброщавы, небадам картона нардирдан гербадан чагба вки про таброщавы, небадам картона лама намла чаток со про таброщавы, небадам картона Дати шухсов таброщавор не бадам картона хчиг бавгме писцава имбров таброщавор не бадам картона гевисцавам чобров таброщав не бадам картона олугдан корлодан чемба бір тавров таброщавор чемба олугдан корлодан Небадам картона врагбаман бе врагбар таброщавор небадам картона завшики кимда Слумуртери кимлар тавра таброщавор небадам картона едм дева кипр таброщавор небадам картон влор набран чара кипр таброщавор небадам картона дык губу гервер таб гер шепр няр кипр таброщав Вшир дерви вшир дам ням кипр таброщавор небадам картона чамба невер жигба жипр все протабращавор не бадам картона карвучу ням чур все протабращавор не бадам картона янтак парпунга ж нямбр все протабращавор не бадам картона парурти тапи варчи все протабращавор не бадам картона Рзамчар дамгонши нямбр все протабращавор не бадам картона рнгарп курту все павши курту мавши протабращавор не бадам картона мамзава тагдан небір шебір тағбір шауыр не бадам картоным завар понва тағбір шауыр не бадам картоны парур ван жып юшердір матсон мадан жавар тағбір шауыр не бадам картоны сантын дан цад мепа йонсар понвар тағбір шауыр не бадам картоны семжан ярадан тынжуада тынжуғны дан жинжи жертон рүшебір тағбір шауыр не бадам картоны левжинда Такшуji чокадам тамбр таброщаву шамба шаншу санва чембо Непала амыгба Непала амыг ганг таброщаванан достава тако втагнеjan допа чонрощава 용석 동화는 мшаго те жиширжена шамба шаншу санван допа чонгала кюн достава так мепи ширде дисанжiji чурнамла варчит мепа янла кемба намла раб кем바나 랍도 shungwa yidg yungor menjerwa yinna ladang men namji yungsok gavrib shayu shir nebir jisib chungwara guba dang nganzhur dugbara tongwa tamchida chakbara mafshe badang digba dang chari zirgi mongnum badang ditiyo yerle yungsu chori monchuk badang Dengmer tamchi jima zigba dang ladang mer namji ngumbar dobrib shawa dang sangtan la gumbrib shayba lag nebir sarwa Yino yor gyor pangwa dang dobi yondar nga la longsho dar tawe wag yo pa yinna pagba rig lag ne be chirka dar me ba jin da kebar nam dang tsambra sho bar nam ji doba yende shamba payong durtawa tak shine shanju sanwa chenbu keba nyebadam kurta yong serpande nyebadam kurta tamchir pang yushir da lakbab sanben doba chungwa la nebar shaja doba chungwa la kundab tembir shawo terki chi kaab tsarwa tang shanju sanwa chenbu po shanju sanwa chenbu shanben dirkut dak sordo chungdande shanju sanwa dunza la gawa kyonar nam chirtar takbir gyo dunza la gawi kyon dedagna gang lab shanju sanwa gang lab tang na chigbo gawa la yang gaja 용술 교화를 영 먼저와 러 정든데기 가스터바 샴반 던즈 니무 니시 본다더 연데 니시 강진나 샴반달라 리기 마든바다 ngqo 마든바 연 이기 마든바 연은 도적 제와 연은 제동 제와 연 어떤 제와 연은 직등 담기 경 구바 연은 직등 렌디비 xtamle 용스 냠바 연은 줄라 마기 바템바 연은 주 용서 방와 연 델랍드 tiglq 니바 연 Vagme palab timba yin, vagme pa dang damba yin, te shtoba dang shoba shi chewa yin, mangda tuba le yong se nyamba yin. Jigne dang langdong ma toba yin, mnirda tsambru shoba la mangirwa yin, sangji gawa le yong se nyamba yin, chula gawa le yong se nyamba yin, gendan la gawa le yong se nyamba yin te shamba. Chu nishe bonda dagnan danza la gawe niyang mga yin bar rig bar shar te shang chib san hua. gang tak nak chik bro gawa la ga jang yong sur kyuwar yang manjir wa yun no nir ju merkyo wa yang yun norts
Could you please close the windows on the two sides? Otherwise, it gets a bit chilly over here. Also, you should close the windows on the top as well because it's no longer summer anymore. I think people want to keep those windows open so that they will be more alert during class, but it will get people ill. That's not good. Summer and winter are different. Being young and being old is different too. So let's continue with the class. Our class on generating the mind of Bodhisattva. So let's continue with the Sutra on generating the supreme aspiration of Bodhisattvas. Well, the content, I think, is not too much. It's mainly about the 22 types of gaining offerings or the faults of such. In the Tibetan version, there are 30 faults that's related to gaining offering or gaining profits. There are also 20 types of the faults of distractions. So those are the two main content that we're going to talk about. I think in terms of our content today, if we were to have the economists or the worldly people listen to our class, they probably would feel rather odd and they won't be able to accept the teachings from today because they would feel that this is, in fact, gaining profit or gaining offering is very good. It's something that they should seek for, which could create lots of convenience for them, and it could create lots of happiness in their lives. From a temporary and ultimate point of view, they would feel that it would be the best for them. But from the practitioner's point of view, the Buddha taught about the faults and the kinds of obstacles that those kinds of gaining profits could create for the practitioners. In terms of gaining profit, this word in the Tibetan translation, in fact, it has two different kinds of connotations. On one hand, it is gaining offering or gaining profit. On another level, it talks about, it means respect. I spent a lot of time on the dictionaries today, in both Chinese and Tibetan, and try to look up these two words and see if it has the connotation of respect. But it seems that gaining profit or gaining offerings from the others or gaining favors, in fact, they don't really have the connotation of respect. But in Tibetan, it has the two meanings together. In any ways, the eight worldly dharmas include fame, wealth, gaining benefits or profits, as well as receiving respect and happiness. So, in fact, it has both of the connotations in Tibetan version, so it includes both. But the Chinese version has only the profit or the benefit aspect. Yesterday, we've already talked about how we should give up the worldly dharmas and engage in genuine practice. As beginner bodhisattvas, they can generate genuine wisdom, and such kind of wisdom can be generated through causes and conditions. There are practitioners who had already been here for 10 years or 8 years, maybe because they did not accumulate enough causes and conditions. When it's time for them to leave this place, their mind stream is exactly the same and sometimes even worse. There could be such kind of situations. But if you yourself really spend a lot of time and be really diligent in terms of the correct dharma, according to what we've studied yesterday, no sleep during the beginning of the evening and the late part of the evening, also practice contentment, as well as practice accumulation of merit and confess all your negative deeds. If you practice in such a way, then your wisdom would definitely arise, because it is generated through causes and conditions. So everyone can strive to give rise to such wisdom. Today we'll continue and talk about what are the biggest obstacles for a genuine practitioner. What are the obstacles for the practitioners to give up the worldly dharmas? The previous great masters and even in the Chinese Buddhism tradition, they also talk about to see through the nature, also let go. Those are very important and usually would be written in in common areas, in places where people would pay a lot of attention to. According to the Tibetan Buddhism, in fact, we also place great importance on renounce from this life. Renounce from this life means that we should also renounce from the worldly offerings as well. The practitioners from the past, they wouldn't accumulate a lot of provisions for their life other than the basic materials that's needed for their livelihood. For mundane beings, what we do is that we would grasp onto those wealth and offerings. And then all kinds of negative emotions would arise, so would eventually become obstacles for your practice. Over here, Maitreya Bodhisattva posed the question to the Buddha, asking, what are the faults that could generate from gaining profits and benefits from the offerings? And when the bodhisattvas would actually observe themselves, how to decrease desire and not generate any afflictions. So Maitreya Bodhisattva then wants to know, after observing the faults of receiving offerings of benefits, and then the Bodhisattvas would understand how to lessen their desire and not to generate afflictions. So let's begin the 22 faults over here. According to the Tibetan translation, sometimes it added two of those faults of receiving offerings together, and sometimes there are the different faults. Later we will talk about that in detail. First of all, the Buddha told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that Maitreya, the beginner bodhisattvas should look at the faults of receiving offerings of profits or of the benefits. In fact, for the wisdom action bodhisattvas, if they were to receive benefits or offerings, that would be fine, because they can use those benefits or profits for something beneficial for the others, and they're not going to grasp onto those kinds of wealth. Look at Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, who was very wealthy, but he doesn't have any grasping towards any of his belongings. But Patrul Rinpoche, who appeared to have only one wooden bowl, but he had lots of grasping towards that wooden bowl. Later, the Guru, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, also gave lots of teachings towards Patrul Rinpoche regarding that. So the beginner bodhisattvas have to look at the offerings of wealth as faults. You have to look at the faults of such. The first fault is that it would generate desire. In our mind stream, it would be very easy to generate desire towards those wealth. Whenever we don't have wealth, we would have less desire. When we have more wealth, we'll slowly grasp onto those. For example, maybe you don't have the bank cards. And then once you have the bank cards and have money in there, and then you would constantly check your pocket and see if you still have those bank cards, and then you would even wear it with your blessed object, such as liberation by wearing. I used to have this liberation by wearing that was made during the time when Patrul Rinpoche was still alive. I lost it for a long time, but I found it recently. So I still have it with me, but I don't have my bank card over there. The first fault is that whenever you receive those offering of benefits or offering of wealth, you would generate desire towards it or grasping towards it. And the second one, whenever you receive it, then after receiving such kind of offering of wealth, you would lose your right mindfulness and even generate anger, aggression, and so on. When you don't have wealth, maybe your mind is very pure, but once you receive those offerings, you would lose your right mindfulness, and then you would generate anger whenever you lose those. For example, when your benefactor or your wealth or your house, your properties, all of those things, if you were to lose them, especially after having desire towards them, you would generate anger, just as Bodhisattva Charyavatara states that if one were to have desire in one's mind, that could generate the fire of anger. Because whenever we have a desire in our mind, that could slowly permeate our mind stream and then generate anger in our mind. Let it be the desire towards the other person or towards the other materialistic belongings. People who do not have lots of grasping, in fact, they don't have lots of anger. We can see that in our life as well. look at the history, people, in fact, would do lots of vicious things because of desire or because of material belongings. For example, in Milarepa's biography, there was once a Geshe whose name was Zapowa, Geshe Zapowa. Usually, he would have his seat at the highest place in a Dharma assembly. But at that time, because people felt that Milarepa's practice was the most supreme, therefore they arranged the throne for the highest throne for Milarepa. This Geshe Zapowa was unhappy about it. So he thought that if I were to prostrate towards Milarepa, then Milarepa would definitely prostrate back to me and venerate me. In that way, I will receive the respect. But Milarepa had this habit that he only prostrated towards his gurus. So after this Geshe prostrated towards Milarepa, Milarepa didn't repay such kind of prostration and veneration. Then he got extremely angry. So he worked with another person and sent poison to Milarepa. According to some of the stories, some historical records, it says that because of such poisons, Milarepa then entered into parinirvana. From the historical point of view, we can see that lots of histories, in fact, it happened because people would harm the others for the selfish gain and the selfish desires. Therefore, as practitioners, we should really contemplate on the different results that could be caused by the wealth. That's something that we should contemplate. That's the second one. Now, the third one, it says that one should look at the faults of gaining profit as it creates a sense of gaining and loss, hope and fear. Therefore, it will cultivate more ignorance inside ourselves. This kind of hope and fear is very common. We would constantly worried if we would lose those offerings or benefits. Just like practitioners, there are some who then would get indulged in those benefits. There were there were Dharma teachers who used to be very diligent and they live a very pure life. But later on, because they start to receive offerings from the benefactors, they would indulge themselves in the offerings of wealth or of benefits. So some of the Dharma teachers, once they get really well known, their behaviors and their practices are no longer like how they used to have. But if you were to lead a very pure and simple life, then even if people make offering to you, if you don't take them too seriously, if you don't worry about what if I lose it, what if I don't gain from that person, from that benefactor anymore, if you don't get indulged with those and then used all of those wealth as a means to benefit others by making offerings to the lamas and teachers and by giving them away to the poor people, then that would be beneficial. However, there are people who lost their practice because they have solid grasping towards those offerings. The fourth one is that the other faults of gaining benefits and offering is that they would generate jealousy. Once a person started to compare oneself with the others, especially in terms of the gaining and loss, then the fire of jealousy would be burning in one's heart. So that's the fourth one. Now the fifth one, with gaining benefit in mind, one would deceive the others because of grasping towards one's own family members and friends. it is because such kind of grasping would lead to deceiving, sometimes maybe for your family and friends. And in order to continue to receive such offerings from benefactors, you would have to do things to deceive the others. And maybe people would generate jealousy towards also the benefactor's wealth as well. This kind of jealousy is really horrifying. According to Bodhisattva Charyavatara, it says that, in fact, the wealth in the other's hands and in our hands are of no difference. But in order for some people to receive the benefits and get the offerings from the others, people could get very jealous of the others to receive the offering and generate lots of afflictions. The sutras also told the story of Devadatta once sowed the seeds of discord between the father and son, the father Bimbisara and the son Ajatasattu. There are stories like such as well. Devadatta at that time tried to deceive the benefactors by manifesting lots of miraculous actions. And for such reason, the benefactors asked him to give them teachings on how to practice those miraculous actions. Madhagalyayana and the Shariputra didn't give those benefactors teachings. But Ananda, though he did not really attain fruition at that time, but he had really good memories. So he gave teachings of meditation to the brother. And then he attended the fourth dhyana. After the fourth dhyana, there are all kinds of miraculous powers that could be attained. And because of such miraculous powers, he gained lots of benefits. That's why from the history, we can see Devadatta also had 500 followers and all gained lots of offerings. Anyhow, that's the fifth one. Because of family members, they would generate the mind of deceiving towards the grasping of getting profits. The sixth one is that one should see that one would flatter the others in order to tempt the others to provide the offerings. Well, there are people nowadays who would say something and then do something else. Sometimes, for example, we would see that there are people who are not gurus, but they pretend to be highly realized masters, and who are not tokus, but pretend to be tokus. They would pretend to be someone else, or they would flatter the others for the reason to receive gaining of the benefits. Other than their personal benefits, they don't really have other bigger goals. They don't have any political or military or any kind of other goals. They're very good at this as well. Some of the people would rather even take it as their personal profession. They would learn how to lure the others, how to practice temptation. So those are all parts of flattery. They're very good at lure the others because they know what others like or desire. If they like to chant mantras or like the prayer wheels or like the Amrita pills, they're very aware of what the others want. So I think the audience over here, you should be aware of your own actions. Make sure that your own actions are pure. Otherwise, if out of your own stupidity, if you were to recommend this and recommend the other blessed object and sometimes promote to build a stupa or make offering to the Sangha, if you don't do it properly or with great skillful means, other people might even take your pure action in a wrong way, especially nowadays in such kind of internet age, internet era. We see all kinds of actions. So we have to be careful of our own actions. We have to be responsible for our own actions. In our Buddhist Institute, I really think we should lead a pure life. We don't really need to go elsewhere and promote it, and we don't need to combine Dharma and benefit together. This is really not good. If you want to make money, if you want to gain social status, I don't think you need to use your own status of a monastic to gain all of those, or use the status of a practitioner as a way to gain all of those. Otherwise, you may become. Otherwise, people may think that you're conducting fraud. So we have to be very careful. We have to watch over our own body, speech, and mind. This is really important. If you really want to benefit the others, you really have to be very thorough in terms of how to practice, how to promote, or how to ask the others to practice beneficial actions. And you have to look at the current political and all kinds of environment. You have to be very aware of that. The seventh one is that in order to gain those benefits, there are the beginner bodhisattvas who would easily become shameless and without any limitation, which is giving up the four noble characteristics. There are people who would give up the four noble characteristics. For example, the noble ones. The noble ones, according to Abhidharma, talked about as a noble one. They do not grasp onto food. They do not grasp onto the housing. They do not grasp onto clothing. Rather, they only practice diligently. That's the characteristics of the noble ones. But I think nowadays there are people, of course, there are people who do not pay lots of attention to eating and clothing and living and all of those, but they only pay attention to listening, contemplation, and practice. Those can be called the great tokus, the great masters. Those are the characteristics of the noble ones. But there are ones nowadays who really enjoy eating, who really enjoy beautiful and good clothing, and they have lots of requirements for the housing as well. But they have no interest towards listening, contemplation, and practicing of the genuine Dharma. For those kind of people, they are not the noble ones. They're not really. They cannot be considered even as the normal people or normal crowd. So don't consider the ones who practice all of those as the noble ones. Well, according to some of the teachings, it says that the ones without any limitation, without any sense of shame, they are of no difference than all the other animals. The eighth one is that one should view the gaining of the benefits as the ones that's forbidden by all the Buddhas, because it could generate lots of arrogance and pride. The Buddhas of the 10 directions, they do not promote gaining offerings for practitioners. According to the Tibetan version, it is all together, but the Chinese version, in fact, is separated into two sentences. Or rather, the Tibetan version is separated, but the Chinese version is together. So the next one, in the same one, in the Chinese version, also talks about how it could promote arrogance. According to Letter to a Friend, where it says that if one were to be very complacent to one's own family and appearances and all the aspects, then they probably won't be able to practice much. They would rather hold themselves in such pride and not really being able to practice anything beneficial. According to arrogance, there are 7 types of arrogance. I think inside the monastery, if you have good housing, good car, and good clothing, people probably won't look at you in a very positive way. But in this world, it's very different. The worldly people would feel very arrogant if they were to acquire a little bit of wealth or status. They would feel very differently. They have a different view. I remember that once there was a Dharma master who studied in the monastery for a while, and at that time he was quite poor. And for some reason, after he left the monastery and through whatever method, he gained a group of students. At that time, I saw him with a black wallet, and the kind of wallet that usually the entrepreneurs would carry around, and he appeared to look with lots of pride. I think benefits could really transform a person, could really change a lot in a person. With such kind of arrogance, you probably won't even look at your family and friends anymore, be quite snobby, and would despise the others. So this kind of arrogance is very destructive, and it's very apparent to the others to see. According to the Sutra on miscellaneous treasures, it says that benefits could destroy everything. It could break one's skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. What does it mean? It could break one's skin. It means break one's precepts. And break one's flesh, which means break one's meditative absorption, and break one's bones, which means break one's wisdom, and break one's marrow, which means it would break one's own virtuous deeds. Because such kind of profit or gaining profit would break one's skin, flesh, bone, and marrow, which means it could really destruct the practitioners. In fact, not only practitioners, I think worldly people are also like that. Once they receive certain benefits or gains, for example, certain officials could become really corrupted, even if he started off being a very good official or authority. Now, the 9th one should also observe that gaining benefits could lead one to generate despise towards the supreme merit field. According to the Sui Dynasty's translation, it says the venerable ones, and the Tibetan version says the guru. I think the supreme merit field could be referring to the gurus. Let it be your supreme teacher, acharya, or your tutor, maybe. After having profits, you probably would despise all of those and generate a sense of arrogance. And the result also looks like you've become a retinue of the Maras. According to Jigme Lampa, it says that according to Jigme Lampa, he said that as a practitioner, if he had acquired all the provisions he wanted, then even even before this person had fully attained enlightenment, this person had already fully attained Marahood. The mundane beings can be very fragile in front of benefits. Just like how the frog would be burnt to death inside of a slowly warmed up water, slowly cooked up water. One, without knowing, would slowly become a terrible practitioner in front of benefits. So I really think that people tend to do those. There are practitioners who started off being very diligent at the beginning, but after receiving certain benefits, slowly they would lose their mind focusing on the Dharma, and maybe the actions would slowly become inappropriate. And more faults would come to that person. I think a majority of people, before you attained certain stability in your practice, you should try your best not to receive benefits from others. Otherwise, you may feel that, oh, look at me, I can receive benefits from others now. Other people would revere me, would make offerings to me now. Maybe I have attained fruition from my Dharma practice and listening. Well, yes, you may come to fruition, but not sure if it's a good fruition or not. Anyhow, that's the 9th one. The 10th one says that one should also view gaining benefit could become the root that would destroy all the virtuous deeds. After receiving benefits, one could get very distracted in all areas. Let it be the 3 poisons or laziness. All of those kind of vice would naturally appear. All the kinds of virtuous deeds, such as listening, contemplation, and practice, and faith towards the 3 jewels and Guru, as well as compassion, would decrease slowly. Now, the 11th one says that one should view gaining benefits would generate lots of grasping. According to the Tibetan version, it means that one will be defiled. And according to the Chinese translation, it says that one would generate a grasping that is just like hailing and frost. This is a metaphor that is actually separate into 2 in the Tibetan translation. What it means is that benefits is just like frosting and hailing that would destroy the crops in the fields. Hailing and frosting probably wouldn't create any destruction to us, but it would destroy the crops, which would be quite harmful to the farmers. And over here, it means that the benefits is just like frosting and hailing, that would destroy one's merit. According to the ornament of Mahayana Sutra Shastra, it says that frost and hailing would destroy for one lifetime, but benefits would destroy a person for many lifetimes. Because after hailing and so on, maybe you will lose some wealth for one time, but benefits, receiving gains and benefits would destroy the practitioner for the accumulation of many lifetimes. Well, whenever it's time to hail, people would worry about their fields or their flowers, whatever they grow, same as frosting. But whenever the mundane beings would receive any benefits, any kinds of gains, they would feel really happy. For example, if one received $100,000 from the offering, they would feel that, wow, I've been practicing the Jambala practice really well. Therefore, I should continue with the Jambala practice. I should give up all the other practices. Or they would feel that they are blessed by the protector or the Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva, and then they would start scheming about how they should spend spend the $100,000, they would give up listening, contemplation, and practice altogether on the second day. They would only think about how to spend or how to save, how to benefit or regenerate benefit from the $100,000 they've received. And slowly they will destroy their practice. The 12th one is that one should view the benefits, the faults of getting offerings, because then you would have to worry a lot about what your benefactors would feel, and you're started to get very much bounded to your benefactor or your family or friends. Whenever they started showing off a little bit of mood, or whenever they would feel a little upset, then you would start getting very much associated with their afflictions as well. You would have to worry about how they would feel. If they do not call you for a little bit of time, you would wonder if they are unhappy about you. And then you would start to wonder what you should do later without the offerings given to you by those benefactors. And slowly, slowly, your practice would retrogress.
So 我们这个就是怎么讲啊，就是应该观察，对，刚才这个单位好像有点不同的单，我忘了怎么解释的，稍微有一点，
I remember the Tibetan version is a little bit different, but I can't quite recall. Let me think about it. As we stated earlier, if you were to generate grasping towards those offerings, then you would create lots of afflictions. But without grasping towards benefits, then you won't have such afflictions. According to the Mahayana Sutra Shastra, where it says that the ornament of the Mahayana Sutra Shastra, it says that if one were to grasp onto getting offering, then one would not abide in residing in secluded places, because the mind is grasping onto benefits. Therefore, one would not rest during day or night, because people would nowadays constantly grasp onto those benefits. One don't even have time to rest, even for a moment. Now, as we've already studied that later, we're going to also observe how the different types of getting offerings would disturb our mind, because we grasp onto certain things that we really like. If you have an object such as a vase or your watch, something that you really like, during the days when it's still the object still stay intact, then you don't feel anything. But whenever it's being stolen or being broken, then there will be lots of suffering that would generate from one's mind. I remember that there was a story back in Yuan Dynasty, a Zen master whose name is Jin Bifeng, and he his practice level, his realization is pretty good. And once a king offered him a beautiful begging bowl that's made of jade. Some said it's gold, but I think probably jade because later you will see through the story, he has lots of grasping towards that jade begging bowl, and he would protect it really well. There was once one of the Yama's guards were to capture this Zen master because this Zen master's life is supposed to end. But they couldn't find him because this master was abiding in meditation. And then these two Yama's guards asked the earth protector, saying that why and where can they find this Zen master? So the earth protector said that, well, if you want to find him, you have to find his jaden begging bowl. And once you touch his jade begging bowl, because of his grasping, he would appear. That's what the two guards did. And after that, they were able to find this Zen master. After he was almost about to be caught, he contemplated on his grasping towards the jaden begging bowl, and then he realized this grasping is really destructive. Therefore, he threw the jaden begging bowl on the ground, which shattered this begging bowl, and then he at that moment attained realization. So he spoke in verses. If one were to capture me, Jin Bifeng, the master, if you can use the iron rods to lock down the space. If you can lock down space, then you can lock me down. I don't really have much to grasp onto, but sometimes when I contemplate on this story, I would think that maybe I have too much grasping towards my mala because I've been wearing it for a long time. When I bought it, it only cost 20 cents, but now I've been using it for a long time, and whenever I couldn't find it, I would get rather quite anxious. Other than my mala, I think I don't really have lots of graspings. Let it be my begging bowl or my house, I don't really have grasping at all, but maybe this mala should be burnt so that I don't grasp on it. I think grasping on the materialistic things is really not good, because whenever we have anything that we grasp onto, if we cannot transform this kind of grasping onto the path of practice at the time of death, maybe just one simple thought could lead to horrifying fruition. Now, the 14th one talks about one of the faults would be you will be very forgetful of the four right mindfulness. Once you have gained any offering, then all of the right mindfulness of body, sensation, mind, and dharma would be very easily for you to forget. And then, after receiving the offering, and since you're very forgetful, then it will be very easy for you to forget about the virtuous dharma or virtuous practice, that is white dharma. In the Tibetan version, they are separated into two. Now, the 15th one is that you should see the faults of receiving benefits or getting offering as that it would make you to regress of the four right diligence. As you see, the four right diligence are you should decrease whatever vice if it already exists, and you should not accumulate any vice. If you do not have any, and you should not reduce any of the virtue if you already have them, and if you should try your best to accumulate them if you haven't got any virtue. Then it says that if you were to lose the four right diligence, it would be easy for the other doctrines to debate over you or win over you. The 16th one is to view the faults of getting offering as that the miraculous actions or wisdom would also be lost or reduced. That is to say, once you receive the benefit, you would not be able to gain any miraculous powers and will not gain any wisdom, and probably would do things that is in violation of the correct truth or correct dharma. This is the 16th. The 17th says that one should view the faults of getting offering as one would generate aversion when they do not or no longer receive the offerings. There's a story that there was once a benefactor who made offerings to a Brahmin, but later that benefactor met a Pratika Buddha who had more miraculous powers than the Brahmin. And then the benefactor changed mind, so he started making offering to the Pratika Buddha rather than the Brahmin. Upon seeing that he lost the offerings from the benefactor, the Brahmin was raged and started to slander the Pratika Buddha. I can't remember the whole story, but that was part of a story that's recorded in the Jakarta stories of the Buddha. Anyhow, if you are not so concerned about receiving offerings or not, then you won't generate any aversion, hatred, or anger. According to Tibetan version, this is a separate point. Now, the 18th says that one should view the faults of receiving offerings as that it would cause anger and talking about the faults of each other. So the more they would look at each other's faults and mistakes, they would generate more and more dualistic and deluded thoughts, which would create more negative deeds. The 19th is that one should view that upon receiving the offerings, the faults would be one would live the worldly life and only be concerned about worldly life and only thinking and contemplating about living happily in the worldly sense. According to Sutra, it says that the more you desire, the more you seek, then the more afflictions. But if you were not to desire, your mind is constantly abiding at ease. So if we were to seek more, then the more afflictions we will generate. If you do not have any desire, do not seek for anything, the happiness would naturally down. The 20th says that one should see the faults of receiving offerings would be, it leads to the decline of meditative absorption as well as liberation samadhi. According to the Tibetan version, it also says that one would decline in one's four immeasurables. Because of gaining offering or gaining any profit, it could lure you to slowly regress on the level of meditative absorption or your liberation, just like seductress. How could a seductress lure you to decline in your practice? Just like that, they would, just like how the seductress would lure people to do things they want, the offering also could lure people away from the path of liberation. According to the Tibetan version, it says that after seduction, just like how the seductress would seduct people, the offering would also seduce practitioners to slowly decline on the path or regress on the path of liberation. Now, the 21st says that the faults of getting profit would lead to one to abandon wisdom and eradication, which is a little bit difficult. Also not included in the Tibetan translation, but as well as the Sui Dynasty's translation. But if you were to explain this, it means that to renounce from the merit of eradication and realization, because with benefits with gaining offering, it could lead the practitioners to renounce from eradication and realization the true wisdom, that is, and then fall into the three lower realms. As well, over here it says that it would fall into hell realm, hungry ghost realm, animal realm, and Yama realm. Now, the 22nd one says that one should view the faults of receiving offerings is just like the faults of Devadatta and Vittalaka, and would be abiding in the three lower realms just like them. I think many people would know the story of Devadatta, but Vittalaka actually practiced the 12 years with the dukkha practice, the aesthetic practice, and he practiced very well. He can also memorize and recite the 60,000 sutras and classical teachings. The sutras he can recite cannot be carried by an elephant. That's how much of the sutras he can recite. But because he was lured away by the gaining of the offerings, and all of his merits were destroyed. Some said that his name is Vittalaka, some said Bhuttalaka, and it's not so familiar, not as familiar as the one that's Devadatta. Some teacher also said that it could be a category of hungry ghosts. Anyhow, those are the 22 types of downfalls of receiving offerings. I think we should all remember those. If you have faith, you really have to slowly think about and contemplate upon each of those, and think about if receiving offerings would be of benefit to you or not. And then I think many people today who don't receive lots of offerings or don't have lots of merits to receive offerings are probably quite happy. But for people who have received offerings, they probably feel that, it's too hard to give it away, it's too hard to let it go. Just like the entrepreneur Jack Ma said that it's easy to earn money, but it's very painful to spend money. Not sure if that's exactly how he felt, but the Buddha told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that as beginner bodhisattvas, one should contemplate and observe the faults of gaining offerings. One should be content with less desire, so that it won't generate afflictions. If you were to have lots of desire, let it be towards people, towards wealth, the more desire you have, the more suffering you will create for your life, and then the less time and the less energy you would have for the Dharma practice. In fact, the Dharma practitioners should live in a pure lifestyle, so that you can then generate the transmundane merits. Otherwise, it will be quite difficult. If people have less desire, whenever you give teachings to them, they can accept them. Accept those teachings in their hearts. If people have too much desire, then they would have lots of aggression, and they would have lots of coarse afflictions. According to the Treasury of Wish-Fulfilling Jewel, it talked about the 16 types of favorable conditions. And over here it says that one will not be despised by the monastics nor the lay practitioners. In fact, over here the Chinese translation is a little difficult to understand, but it is the explanation according to the Tibetan version. Anyhow, it means that the beginner bodhisattva, without gaining benefits from offering, will not be looked down at by the lay practitioners nor the monastics. Not to encourage anyone to generate a wrong view. That's what it means. In fact, that's what it means. Also, they would abide in the most supreme aspiration and would abide in the true state. So they would live or lead a pure life. They're not going to feel inferior. They're not going to be grasped or controlled by gaining offering. Not going to feel that I'm so poor or poor me, I don't have this, I don't have that, but the others have those. They won't have such kind of inferiority, feeling of inferiority. And they won't feel fear either, because they won't be afraid that, oh, what if my wealth being stolen, being taken away? They won't feel that either. So in such a way, they will also be far apart from the evil path, because they don't have to fear to be fallen into the three lower realms. They are not going to be, they're not going to grasp onto delicious food or anything pleasant, and for such a reason, they would gain liberation even in the most adverse environment of Maras. Because once you receive the offerings, then all the Maras would have the opportunities to lure you away from the path. But without getting offerings, then you have nothing to fear. Whenever and wherever you live, you don't even have to close the doors, because you don't have any fear at all. Then all the Buddhas would praise such kind of practitioner. All the celestial beings would admire such practitioner as well. And this one over here is a little bit difficult to understand according to the Chinese version of translation. But according to the Tibetan version, it says that one would not be one would attain purity through practicing meditation. That's the meaning in the Tibetan translation. But the Chinese translation is a little bit difficult to understand, because it has something to do with not being defiled in meditation. Now look around, you see that people are getting defiled by the worldly gains. There are people who are very much caught up by the stock market. Many would practice meditation, but they really couldn't practice sitting meditation at all, because they would sit for a little while and then they have to stand up and they have to check if it went up or went down. Then their minds would also go up and down according to the curves of stock market as well. So the contamination of meditation is gaining offerings as well. Without gaining offering and benefit, one would be straightforward with integrity. They will not indulge in the five desires as they see the faults in all of that. And their practice would be of the same as the noble ones. Also, they would enjoy to be in company with the practitioners. The Buddha then said that, Maitreya, if Bodhisattvas have wisdom, then they should know the merits are like such. Therefore, they should practice in such a way and lead a lifestyle that is that has less desire, and they should try their best to eradicate desire. So this is the first part, the 22 seconds of benefits. Unfortunately, I can't expand too much on that due to the constraint of time. Now let's continue with the 20 types of distractions. In fact, after Phuntsok Rinpoche give teachings on this, I often would quote from this. I remember there are 20 types of distractions, but I couldn't find where it is from. The other day, I was looking for the 20 types of distractions, but somehow couldn't find it. But it is from here. This part is really simple. Maitreya Bodhisattva over here asked the Buddha on behalf of assembly, saying that a world-honored one, what are the faults that are found in distractions? If the Bodhisattvas were to stay in quiet, secluded places, would they not generate any afflictions? Over here, distraction means somewhere that is distracting in the sense that it's chaotic and it's heated, full of vex. Those are the place that's called distractions, or places that could generate such distractions. The Buddha then answered saying that Maitreya, the beginner bodhisattvas, should observe the 20 types of faults that can be found in distractions. By observing, if the beginner bodhisattvas can abide in quiet places, secluded places, they will not generate afflictions. I think compared to large cities, we live in a rather very quiet and secluded area. We don't really have other things to do. We're not distracted by anything. All we need to do is listening, contemplating, and practicing the Dharma. There are some staff members who serve the Sangha, but other than that, there's really nothing else to do. There are places, for example, caves and in forests. I think to compare to those areas, there are some more sounds of people coming and coming back and forth. But in general, I think it's considered as a very quiet practice place. And then the Buddha started stating the 20 kinds of faults, saying that Maitreya, there are 20 types of faults that can be found in distraction. The first one is that one will not protect one would not protect one's body, the karma of body. The second is not protecting the karma of speech, because if one were to stay in a really distracted place, in all kinds of chaotic environments, it's very difficult to protect one's karma of speech. And third one is not being able to protect one's karma of mind. And the fourth one is one would get entangled with desire. The fifth one is that it would increase ignorance. According to the Tibetan version, it also says increase anger, which is similar to the Sui Dynasty's translation. So the fifth one is increase ignorance. Practitioners, after staying in a quiet place for a long time in practice, but after, if they were to go into the large cities, then they would find that their practice would regress, especially in terms of the transmundane wisdom. The sixth one is that one would indulge in the worldly affairs, such as war and love and all of those, love affairs and all of those. The seventh is that one would give up all the transmundane speech, because in the world, people would only talk about competition and earning money and wealth and all of those. Eighth one is one would respect and revere rather the non-dharma. The ninth is to give up dharma, the correct dharma. And the 10th one says that the Devaputra, the Mara, would be easily to influence you, especially when you're not protected by mantra and not protected by your practice or any of the practice boundaries, and go into areas or places such as bars and clubs and so on, then it's easy for the Maras to find you. The 11th one says that one would indulge in worldly life without practice. According to the Tibetan version, it is in fact in one, that is in combination with the next one, where it says that one would squander and often have dualistic thoughts or deluded mind. But over here it is, in the Chinese translation, it is split into two. The 13th it says that one would have many dualistic thoughts. The Sui dynasty also translated as dualistic thoughts. The 14th says that one would have a decrement of their previous listening and study. The ones who studied Buddhist logic and Madhyamika, once they stay in a distracted environment, they would forget about their learnings from previous time. The 15th is that they would not attain meditative absorption. 16th, without wisdom. 17th, they would swiftly abandon their pure life or pure practice life. For example, the monastics would very quickly give up their monastic vows. And 18th, it says that they will lose their admiration towards the Buddha. Let it be the Buddha or Buddha or the Buddha statues, they would slowly lose faith in them. And 19th is no longer having admiration towards the Dharma, and the 20th is no longer having the admiration towards the Sangha. So the Buddha said to Maitreya, saying that, Maitreya, those are the 20 faults that can be found in distraction, and those should be contemplated by the Bodhisattvas. This is easy to understand, and I really hope that you can observe and contemplate upon it yourself and see if your mind of practicing the Dharma has decreased in such kind of environment. We should try our best to stay at a quiet practice place and distance ourselves from chaotic and distracted environments. For people who want to write the diaries, I think this would be a very good resource for you to refer back to. So what are the 20 faults that you can find in distraction? What are the 22 faults that you can find in getting offerings? Whenever you study anything, it's the best for you to reflect upon those on yourself. We need to reflect upon ourselves so that we can correct our mistakes and increase our merits and virtuous deeds. It would be very meaningful. So today, we're going to stop here. We have class tomorrow.